things that I want to talk about in this lecture is the connection between poetry, wisdom, and revolution. So, when we write and we learn new things about ourselves and how to value ourselves and see ourselves, that can revolutionize the way we see ourselves and our place in the world. Remember, the poetic mindset is about seeing the world through fresh eyes and kind of shedding any delusions about what should matter and what we should be paying attention to. That sort of hierarchy of what is worth writing about and seeing and all of that. We shed all of that when we enter the poetic mind space. So when we do this and we see ourselves and our place in the world and the world in new eyes, we gain some wisdom. And when we gain that new wisdom, it's our responsibility to share it with other people. And this portrait, share a portrait of this worldview. And every time somebody shares their portrait, their worldview, it chips away at this idea that there's only one way to see the world, that there's only one way to be beautiful or one way to be successful or important. It chips away at the idea that what this person said forever ago is the only way to view things, and that there's only one voice that should be taken seriously and only one voice that should be heard. We need to hear from a lot of different voices and a lot of different points of view. And every time somebody speaks up and shares the way they see the world, it's a mini revolution. There's a new way of accessing it that's shared. And that's really an important part of poetry. And it's why we need to be honest in it. You don't want to get out there and lie when it's your chance to share how you see the world. If you're honest about what you're going through, you can really help somebody. I mean, I think we've all had that moment when you're reading a book or a poem and you almost just like set the book down for a second because you're like, yes, I feel that same way. And you put it into words. It's really generous to be honest in your writing. And it's very revolutionary to do too, especially if you're from a group that is not always represented in literature or is not given the opportunity to represent themselves often in literature. To give a sort of a deep dive into that mind space is an important thing to do. And I think that's why we hear all the time, the pen is mightier than the sword. And that's why every poem is a revolutionary act. Every poet is a revolutionary, because a poem is always going to be asserting a new alternate worldview. It's always going to be asserting a new set of values. And that's a dangerous thing to someone who's trying to keep the status quo, to offer a different lens to see the world through that someone else isn't in control of. So anytime you write a poem, you're doing something that is very important and very absurd, especially in a culture where money and productivity are the most valued things. To sit down and write a poem and be a poet is almost a surreal act. It's very far removed from what we value. And that's why, I mean, just being here and just working and thinking about poetry is really important. And it's a really important thing to do. I always think with poetry, it's so easy to go through your life and miss half of it. And poetry is a way to stop that from happening. To be like, it's beautiful, it's spring, there's birds, there's flowers, there's clovers. I'm not going to just be thinking about the stock market or, there's all this like racial injustice and economic injustice and violence. I'm going to focus on the humanity of the situation and those values and think about that and not just think about like STEM and social media presence and stuff. So the poetic mind spends its time on what it's drawn to and what it thinks is important. And just by doing that, it can challenge a lot and change a lot. So what I want you guys to do as you move into this poetic mindset, just be in the moment, feel the intimacy of the moment and all of your senses. Trust your mind, trust what it's drawn to, let it leap around. Don't come in thinking, I'm going to write a poem that sums up everything about my community. Just relax into it and follow your mind where it goes. So if you have pen and paper or a Word document and could take that out, I would do that, because I actually noticed that I am very inspired to write poetry. And I come up with some really good lines when I'm listening to other people write or listening to other people read. Even if I have like the TV on or something, I've noticed that that can help me sort of think of poems or think of a line for poetry. So, obviously, do please pay attention, like listen to my reading. But if you're pulled to write something of your own, or you get, bounced off in your own direction, and you're in that creative space, just go with that. Keep what I said in mind. Don't be too intentional. Be astute observers of the concrete world without necessarily taking into account what is an image that belongs in a poem. And yeah, just be honest is the other thing. Let your mind jump around and see where it goes. So I am reading today from my forthcoming poetry collection. I actually just found out that it's getting published through Main Street Rag. So I'm very excited to have this coming out into the world. And so I'm going to read for a bit, give you guys a sense of my poetry, and then we'll work on writing some of our own. So these are all from the poem Honey Month. These are all from the book Honey Month. And this first poem is called Samson. Samson finagled out of his hair duties. I did not. I peel a row of eyelashes off the heart of my heel and sit unreformed on my vanity chair. Was it self-sabotage? Do I fear realizing my full power? I am here to consume. Outside, a breathing city invites me in. Once you've caged some electricity, it's easy to get a man to fall in love with you. It's difficult to maintain that without suffering. You already know that from the day we met, when I ran towards you, disappearing and reappearing between the campus light posts before arriving in your arms. I let you lift a veil of moonlight off my face. You hunger for me like you do all trouble, mischief, and sorrow. Such poor behavior, flannel man, can let danger into your den. And we rolled recklessly everywhere that year. Love overtook us both. What can you take from the man that loves you? Everything. Everybody already knows that. This poem is called Never Fight a Land War in Russia. I confirmed my faint notions of skeletons in the late aughts when I caught my own reflection, lounging in silk slacks, reading racks of magazines, a chain of vertebrae dangling down my back like an unlatched necklace. I proved to be out of touch. My compromise, self-destruction over no destruction, or what became the opposite of disappearing. One marks the land one controls. I was Stalin, starving out those with the intent to conquer. So these next set of poems are all about the cicada plague from the summer of 2015 in Morgantown. And one thing I noticed is whenever I set out to observe nature in my poetry, I always end up observing myself or something in my own mindset. So if there's ever any images that you find yourself coming back to in nature, those are worth writing about and seeing what that can bring out in you. So this one is called Malt. After 17 years underground, surviving on root juice and rumors of air, that must seem your real life. In this moment of breeze and leaf, some snorkeling escapade, temporary realm transgression. Cicada, I see you guzzling the sap. I hear you drumming the hi-hat all night. Your cat became your floor, and soon you will shed even that. Then I will be here, walking the carpet of shells you abandoned. This one is called Disarm in the Morning. Baby's so sour lately. Now for the disclosure game. We hid in the Velcro sky, way beyond the porch, closer to the beautiful CVS. Take it honey slow on this topic. Remove your sheet mask, unzip your hoodie, even unknot the strings. That's how open you must be. In love, don't tear the black sky until dawn, until the sun opens up as a lotus, until you are prepared to relinquish your mystique. Not till you've pressed your cheek to his cold wool work coat and felt your liquid spine and wanted to spill your guts and wanted to run until you reached the river. So this is another poem about cicadas, and it's called Ginger Whiskey Lemonade. I drink ginger whiskey lemonade solo on green luxury summer. I take in views, if nothing else. The cicada's color palette is magnifique. Charcoal and mango with citron moments and restrained iridescence, all showcased on broadleaf weed, or at times dotting a door frame or netting a horizon adorningly. After what the Bible promised, this plague has left me underwhelmed. Like the root cause of the cicada sap feast mating fest is simply warm soil. No one found God in it. Today I am the specter, but perhaps this moment is really about me. Their tinny hums so resonate with my inner ear's experience of the internal and eternal. This poem's called The Even Keeled. I was motivated, not inspired, my sophomore year, unplugging everything, squeezing my friend's hand like we're all already pretty, before tossing my lit, unfinished cigarette off the deck into the yard. It extinguished itself in the dew. Remember me burning through my terrible 20s. I stopped for breath when I got to West Virginia. Now I'm marked by my inertia. I saw a jet take out the yellow sun and I continued. So this is one about the sky. And I think the sky is a very fruitful place to begin when you want to write a poem, because it's always different and it's like an ink blot. Whatever you want, whatever's on your mind, you're going to see in the sky. It's also good for practicing capturing things as they really are, because the sky is rarely blue, but it's how we always draw it. In reality, it's more likely to be peach or something else. So when you look to the sky, it can instantly get you in that mindset of showing things how you see them instead of how the icon you imagine it to be. So this one is called Bravo Sky Once Again. Sure, it was so in his truck on those gold spun dawns, everything too pretty as love first drew near. He felt heaven trailing him when he drove, saw clouds branching beside him, so opalescent and orange. He quarreled with the view, sighed, imagining a flowery brink. Jaw wound tight, he chewed his cheek. He started towards home, resigned in a green F-150 with his elbow out the window, blowing steam into his knuckles because romance seemed all but inevitable. This one is called 3 Encounters with My Nemesis. Someone got her going about marks on the subway platform. I turned towards the tracks, eyes rolling. When the southbound pulls up, I'll ditch her, ride on the accordion between cars, hands out in the whizzing black. I'm not going to her party because I'm grounded and I hate her, because I have a pimple on my cheek, making me blue and red, and the last sight I want to see is her skin smooth as snake back, dull as creatine powder. After she got attacked, her lips became a loose faucet of I love yous. Her goodbyes evolved into theater. Sandwiching my hands between hers, she unloads a be safe. Out in the wind, I tried to walk home, but the city blocks unrolled endlessly. Philadelphia could do that then, before I knew so well about danger. I was walking in my big before, turning my ear to each dark alley, and all the wind could do was whistle. So one more sky poem. This one's called Lunacy. There are black marks across the sky. Oh, there are pen marks across the sky, black from a laundry accident. I'm in my backyard, imagining hanging clothes on a line. No, I'm online, imagining hanging laundry. I can see lilac dusk in a red rug. I can imagine a backyard full of baklava trees. I can predict a gray night sky, light pollution pooling around the stadium, the moon out of frame. Last night, I saw the true moon suspended in my bedroom mirror. So I gasped and I asked, why am I getting so lucky? And I wished, stay with me through this jag or till I'm done watching. And I chanted, come up my porch steps, come up my porch steps, walk through my screen door. I can be withholding too. Um, so this next poem is from the mindset of a cicada, imagining what a cicada would say to me if it saw how I was living my life. And I think that sometimes it's important to embody a different voice that isn't your own when you're writing poetry, and to go through a different perspective. And that's another way you can see things through a fresh set of eyes. So this one is called Then the Cicada Said. You have kept a life with the heft of tutu material. 2 hours past noon and all you've crafted is a ponytail. Everyone who walks by your studio is drunk and vocal. Taxidermy spiders tumble in your corner. Piles of spiders grand plie on your windowsill. I know where I can survive and when. You hurry and plant yourself where there is no refuge for you. You don't thrive in Philly or in summer. You move to Harrisonburg, a place compiled of parking lots that look like moonscapes, not vast, just lonely, and strip miles that extend into the vanishing point. Smallest of all women, don't you know what you are truly at the mercy of, to what root you owe your sustenance? So one other concept that I want to talk to you about is a prose poem. And a prose poem is a longer poem. It's usually going to be written in full sentences, but it's going to embody some of the same values as poetry, with an emphasis on sound and some room for ambiguity. So this is a prose poem, and it's called Chasing Bread. For breakfast, we ate old cheese with the polka dots cut off. I handed you slices in silence as we sat on our oriental rug. I suggested we paint our walls the color of the tea from Cape Town. For lunch, we felt too lively to eat our ham. We wished for kale and ginger, a house whose walls weren't shedding, while we scribbled our plans on legal pads and picked at our toes. For dinner, we slurped soup and sucked down wine. We went to our stoop and watched bats punctuate the pink sky. I painted my nails to match the cicada. I applied my blush in bat swoops. We looked at our long lawn for more inspiration. We spit out fruit seeds. We retreated indoors, having gathered nothing but bug bites. This poem is called Sleeping as Two. Tired man, I unknot the day from your back. I blanket your body and amble your hills of breath rendered in grumps. You sleep so heavy I get sucked in. Only this lulls my twitching ego into humble slumber. Sleep earths us. We travel to where rocks grow. Okay, so this next poem, you can imagine it like it's a reverse image of itself. Sometimes what makes a poem interesting to read is the syntax, the order of the words, and the way the words are put together are different than what we would normally expect. And one way to sort of uncapture that in your own writing is to write a poem and then look back over it and imagine telling it in reverse. So you're writing the poem, and then to help you unlock the syntax, you flip it and you do the lines in reverse. And that's sort of what this poem is. This poem came from a poetry prompt or poetry idea similar to this. So I wanted to read this one to you guys so that this might help you, might unlock some interesting syntax for you. So this is called, or a way to get to interesting syntax, I should say. So this is called Grays Counted Carefully. I borrowed from my mother a cinder block bookcase, chicken bone stock. I can't help but return to our cement floors in Pittsburgh, shallow pools of gray. I'm silently taking stock. She taught me the art of the barter, the beginning, but not all of it. A tangle of jewelry tossed in a bag, a row of rusted days, blank. Need is the only thing that can really change a person. My mom wanted to carve her body Baroque. The bravest thing I am is round. Pittsburgh I have borrowed without returning. A cinder block nativity scene, a place to stack small books. What do you have left to barter with? My mom stacks her folded cotton shirts. I want everything to be like that. She can fold me into soft cotton, and I try to be brave and round. I love her. She showed me the art in my cluster of scraps. Rococo bodies carved my mother. Really, this is the only thing. In that someplace where empty equals vast, she tried to crawl out of the cavity of a steel mill. And I wanted to read one more to you guys. So I also want, one second. So actually, let me just read one. I'm going to read two more. So I think that one's about my mother as well. And this is one for me personally, that was that idea where you go in with a vague idea of what you might want to write about, and then it kind of goes somewhere else for you, then goes somewhere else and goes somewhere else. And so this is called You Meet Your Mom Again When You're 25. This time with more dignity and a stronger sense of the sublime, meaning you've grasped the gravity of the relationship and surrendered. How fun and ancient when we giggle or gather as mother and daughter in the city by the sycamore trees. This morning rang red, then shattered into cerulean dust. I was blown away from my mother at 17, rolling south till I got snagged by the sleeve in the Blue Ridge Mountains. My mother's mother, skirted to a beach. She holds hands with her sister. Anywhere you go, you see mothers. At 25, you see the daughter in your mother, a lineage of girlhood outgrown, then recreated from her rib. Okay. So this last one is called You're Safe. And it's about West Virginia, which I think is such like the best place to write about. There's so much that you can talk about, and there's so much that hasn't been said. There's so much worthy of observing here. So this is the poem I'll end with. It's called You're Safe. You're safe in Appalachia. Nobody nukes Appalachia or assesses you as harshly as your parents. Maybe they did love me too much all along, and I only now can see. You can roam up and down in Appalachia, smearing the division between ethers, ascend into gradient lilac twice a day. No wars over words for shadows, no clogged cities or wearing long sleeves, no sleeves, period, almost. In Appalachia, you can smell delivery food 20 minutes prior to arrival. I hike up my mountain early morning, same old row of rocks, biting the ground. Mica luster bling, I am nearly sunblind. I hang a frame around the sky with my thumbs and indexes, then gobble up the treetops. Okay, wait, I'm actually going to read one more, and then this is really the last. This is the last one, then move into writing on our own. And this one is called Night Garden. The genre of thoughts has limits, like this cape is just for the house, but tonight I'm full of abandon and already barefoot in a field of bath mat moss, muttering, intuition is not a frivolous itch. When walking a tight line of English ivy or dipping an oar into the rippling melody of the nightingale, I'm right to question the mischief of rats nested in the Virginia creeper. But if laying in a clover patch under misty chiffon air, my gut yanks me towards death-defying feats, I am prepared to abide when the black lake croaks and the white blooms unencrypt, and I asked only to be uncovered from my own heaping expectations. So that is where I will end my reading. This is where I imagined El Habib would be reading. But instead, we'll go right into our writing activity. So I have a prompt that I want to share with you guys that I think will be helpful. So this one is called My Hometown Perspective, and I just shared it in the chat. So I think you should be able to see it. And this is a poem that, or this is a prompt that should help you with movement in your poem. Of course, if you are moved away from this prompt, if you start and you go in a different direction, go in that direction, follow your instinct. This is a way to help you get going. So you're going to start by thinking of your hometown. A lot of what I write is about places I've lived. And you want to imagine what it might look like from a bird's eye view. Really picture concrete details. Really think, is it going to look, well, is it going to look like a microchip? Think of how that will look. Spend some time on that. Maybe it's a few lines for you. Maybe it's just one or two. But imagine it in your head and really embody that as much as you can. Then I want you to try to write a line describing one of the places in your hometown from very close up. So earlier when we talked about the blueberry with the green skirt, that's a really close up image. So we're changing scales and jumping around in this prompt. You're starting from very far away and then you're moving to something really close up. Think about a place you really like to be when you're in your hometown. Think of a detail and zoom in. Then changing again, think of the past and think of something that took place there that could only happen there, or that whenever you feel certain weather, you're like right back in that place again. Think of something that's really like in you from your hometown and write about that a little bit, being precise, but maybe more emotion can start entering the poem now. And then finally, I want you to think about a moment in your hometown that is going to take place in the future. Maybe it's tonight, maybe it's 100 years from now or 10 years from now. But we were just in the past, so now we're moving to the future. When we write poems, it's about movement and leaping and moving from something small to something big, from something that's close to you to something that's close to somebody else. And part of what's enjoyable about poetry is watching somebody make these moves. So we're looking for, muscular leaps through your way of thinking in this prompt. So go ahead and get started and allow yourself to be as creative and risk-taking and reckless as you can get yourself to be. And you can write this with pen and paper or in a Word doc, whatever works best for you. And don't just try to stay very open. Maybe we can share some of these. Yeah, I would love to read or have you guys read them, but take your time. Look out your window, walk around the room, allow moments in between these lines. It doesn't have to be like shh, 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 shh. You should feel free to put on music, walk around your home, look outside. Let's take a few minutes to really just let these poems come to life. So we'll touch base again, and I was thinking 5-10 minutes, if that sounds right to people. So, and I always suggest write one line at a time, pause, and then wait for the next line to come to you. Don't think of the poem all at once. Think of one line, you know, take a sip of water, get in your mind, then the next line, slowly. And if you finish, if you could give me the thumbs up reaction emoji or just let me know, that would be wonderful. Great, we have our first person finished. Oh, great. So people are starting to finish. Maybe read over your poem to yourself. I would love to hear these if anybody would be willing to share. That would be really wonderful. Remember to let in doubt and uncertainty, maybe some literal questions can find their way into your poem. It's much more about the questions and the doubts than the answers when we're writing poems. It's basically just questions and observations in a big way. Okay. Is anybody ready to share? Does anyone want to share what they came up with? Oh, thank you, Victor. That's so great. Would you mind?
Just read.
Yes, please.
All right. The title is a bit long, even though you did not ask us to put a title. So that town is called Bamunkumbit. Saddled between two holy hills sits my venerated town with flowery memories refilled. Riverbanka reminds me of the magnetic fishing spots. The flamboyant Royal Festival is engraved in my life forever. And dreams of the town centenary coming next year keep me believing I can fly.
Victor, that turned out so good. Oh my goodness. I love that opening line, especially about being saddled between two holy hills. Gorgeous, gorgeous opening, gorgeous finish.
Oh,
That was really, I'm very impressed with that. Thank you so much. Yeah.
You're just flattering me.
No, I'm not. I promise. I promise. Would anyone else like to read? No pressure if you don't want to. It's always great to hear other people's work, though. Anybody? Oh, thank you, Heidi.
I can try. I'm no poet. I'm an appreciator of poetry. And I think what's kind of cool about this, though, is that I don't think I came up with anything great, but it got me thinking about this place in a new way, which is the town I grew up in on Long Island in New York. And I haven't been there since the day after Christmas in 2019 because of COVID. And anyway, so yeah, again, it's not very good at all. I'm no Victor. So I just, and it's very short. Roads and streets like swirls leaning into the sound. The beach at the end of the landing, just past the blacktop and concrete. At 16, I sat and watched the waves crash. At 43, I try to imagine returning.
Heidi, that's very good. I love the sound in the line. At 16, I sat and watched the waves crash. I bet that would be very interesting if you were to scan it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
I think that was really good. It's very reserved in some ways and very lovely. Thank you for sharing that. That was very nice. Anybody else want to share? Casey, thank you.
I will try. but as Heidi, you are more of a poet than I am. I can tell you, being a math teacher, I work in numbers.
Yeah.
So, so I am from Martinsburg and have only ever left Martinsburg for 10 years, but I am back in Martinsburg. So I was trying to really think about things growing up. A mighty gold dome with businesses all around. I traveled north to the round brick building with servers on skates. The smell of the barbecue and the yellow paint of the car. The 100th birthday was celebrated, and I ran onto the field, joining my treasured on the stage. I hear sirens in the distance and question, is it time to go?
Casey, that was very good. I love that you brought in other senses. So did everyone hear how Casey brought in the smells and the visuals and how that can, like, the more senses we engage, the more we're right there with her in the poem. So that's really good to do. And I think you guys are actually really going above and beyond on this prompt and writing some like straight up poetry with this. So I'm very happy. Anybody else want to share? Not to put anybody on the spot. All right, let's hear. Quita.
Okay, this doesn't make any sense, but
Perfect.
it's what it is. Okay, so I answered the questions though. So, all right. Abandoned but safe, forgotten old place. The brownish but black alveolar top soft as a Q-tip, and the purple and yellow frame shadowed by a hue of burgundy. Fragrant, gentle petals spread apart, not yet ready to fall, laying against the evergreen and olive stem. The chair rocks and swings, cuddling me, soaking my energy and carrying my weight. I became stronger, slept, ate, and recovered. I learned to breathe and took a break.
I am blown away. That was gorgeous. That had so much evocative language and was so trusting and leaping and poetic. And that was very, very cool. I am very impressed you're able to get that from that prompt. That seems very above and beyond, and just that was phenomenal. That really, really was. You guys are very much impressing me with this. I'm like,
Okay.
oh my gosh.
Well, thanks. I'm surprised.
Right? That came out like really good. That's
Okay.
like, that was like almost like beatnik poetry. Like that was very vivid and rich and just amazing. Does anybody else want to share theirs? I don't want to put anyone on. Yes, okay, Josh.
Am I audible? I don't know how well.
Yes, you are.
Okay. Sorry, give me a sec. Okay. A park sinking in a dandelion sea. Metal toys ignored, creaking poles and stagnant swings. A vacant court, all drift in summer grays. And at its corner, a boy cut in two by a stop sign shadow. He turns that corner, cheeks puffed full of chili sauce punishment for saying God in the house where no God lived.
That ending, oh my gosh. That was also, I promise I'm not just saying this for all of them, but I'm shocked with how good these are turning out. The beautiful beginning with the sea of flowers and the abandoned metal toys, that ending. You guys, this is very exciting for me. In fact, I would really like if you guys sent me these. I would love to see them, but don't feel like you have to, but I'll put my email in the chat. Wow. Josh, do you write a lot of poetry?
Randomly, if it strikes me, I will do that.
Yeah. I can tell, like the ear, you can definitely pick up on that. It's you are a poetic person. Anybody else willing to share? No pressure at all. Okay. So I would like to share 2 more prompts with you guys. This first one I'm sending is to help a poet discover their own voice. And a big way our voice comes through is through the words that we use. But it's difficult to know what words are regional to you or, you know, of the same generation of you and are of the same maybe gender identity, as like all of these things. But we want our poems to sound like ourselves. So if you are girly, your poem should sound girly. If you are 19, your poem should sound like a 19-year-old. Sometimes we think, oh, we need to sound like old white men when we write to be taken seriously. And that is just a horrible way to approach poetry or and academics in general. But so for this poem, we're trying to find our own voice. And I think if you are ever experiencing writer's block, you need to imagine a very receptive audience. And one way to do that is to think of your best friend or the person you talk to a lot. So here's what the activity is for this prompt. First, you're going to find a piece of writing, and the more far removed from poetry, the better. So like a cereal box, a shampoo bottle, maybe just anything that is around you that has words on it. Start there. Then I want you to look in your text messages to your phone, and I want you to find words that are just very unmistakably you. Words that if someone was like doing an impression of you, they would use. So words that sound like your age, your generation, that sound like where you're from, words that only you and your family really use, that kind of stuff. So once you have these two groups of words, and maybe just 5 from each, write a poem that blends those words together. And the poem, just start with wherever your mind begins with. So for this poem, it's not as prompted, it's about finding the words. And if you're someone who writes a lot of poetry, a really fruitful activity is to look through your poems and see the words that are reoccurring, circle those words, and then write a poem using just those words. And that can really untap some connections that maybe you didn't realize were there. So I am going to share a second one with you guys because I was thinking maybe this would not be like for everybody, might not like this one. So I also wanted to share this prompt that has to do with experiencing the intimacy of the moment, like we were talking about. So when you're experiencing the intimacy of the moment, you are unguarded, you are feeling and seeing and hearing and tasting, and you're just there. So whether it is like a hot summer night or a cold winter morning, or where, you know, you're walking into an indoor swimming pool, you know, those places where you're like, I know every sensation here. So this prompt is to help you write a sensory poem. And what I'm asking you to do in this prompt is to think of a really quiet moment where everything was completely silent. No sound, just you. Those moments are very rare in life. When you are actually hearing, there's actually no sound. Try to think of a moment in your life where that was the case, and try to bring the surroundings, the intimacy and urgency of that moment into a poem through touch and taste. I can't think of the other senses right now. Temperature. And just a short 5-line poem that brings that to the audience. So feel free to start writing on either one of those prompts. You can pick one, you can do both. I had a feeling some people would be more drawn to one than the other. So if you're more, depends on what you're interested in, really, whatever one you're drawn to. But as always, whenever you're writing, go where you go with it. If you get lost in pursuing, like, I'm liking all these L sounds in this poem and I'm just going to go there, then just go there. And that's one of the best pieces of advice I can give you is trust and follow wherever your mind takes you. And that's, as the more reckless you can be when you're writing, the better it's going to turn out. Be risk takers when you're writing. So I would love to hear some of these when you're finished. So just, walk around, put on music, draft on your phone, whatever is right for you is right for the writing process.
In the second prompt, are we looking to eliminate sound from it? Is that what the goal is?
Yes,
Okay.
there's gonna be no sound, but you're thinking of a moment when it was completely quiet, so there won't be sound in it. But try to really get back into that. And maybe all these other sensory details don't come in. Maybe there was an emotion that was much more palpable, or, so just, it is usually a sensory poem with this, but sometimes really quiet moments that have some other thing that is more overpowering. So I would just, or it brings you to somewhere else. So yeah, but usually no sound in the poem for that prompt. And I'm gonna go ahead and put my email address for Shepherd in here. If anybody, oh, actually I sent that just to clear that down. Because I would love to read anything that you guys produce from this. And when you're writing outside of this setting, really let there be a lot of time in between a line. So sometimes I'll write one line in the morning, and then like 3 hours later, I'll be like, oh, that's where that poem goes next. Like I see it now, it came to me. So sometimes a poem is a many day thing, and then that's just how that poem's going to be. And sometimes they'll be really quick and all at once, but it's not up to you. It comes through you. It's beyond you in a way. And that's something that should be embraced in poetry. So yeah.
Do you all still need the prompts up here, or should I take them down? Are the
And I
prompts?
will share a link to all of these prompts so that you guys can use these once this is over. And this, this way you guys can have them, especially for teachers or whatever, if you ever want to use these in the classroom or anything like that. And if anybody's finished, if you wouldn't mind just telling me with a thumbs up reaction or letting me know, that would be really great. Oh, wow. Cool. All right, we have some people finishing up. Is anybody at a place where they want to share theirs? Need more time.
I can.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you.
So am I supposed to say anything about it, like where it's from or something? It's
Yeah, I think that'd be interesting.
it's number one, the looking at something that I wrote and then looking at a text message. And so I wrote a short story when I was in graduate school. It was for an ethnography class. So the short story was about an experience that I had in the 5th grade. And then the text message is about a similar experience that somebody is having right now who is one of my friends.
Okay, that's great.
And so every other line is one from one story, and then the next line is from somebody else's story.
Cool.
Okay. So paper mache rocket leave the moon. Have time to talk. Laughter, crying, humiliated. Take it personal. Ball squeezing life, head thumping. Hard not to take it. Trapped, lifeless chamber, level head. Tunnel of frustration, outcast. Personally trying. Unforgettable launch.
Oh, that was really, I love how the first and end come to bookend with the space metaphor, space imagery. That's really wonderful. And I really love how much you move and leap throughout your poetry, and you don't have to, it's not overburdened with connective tissue and summary. And I think that is just fantastic. It's one of my favorite features in poetry and poets. So that's fantastic. And thank you so much for sharing it. Anybody else done? I know that wasn't like a ton of time, but anybody else? No pressure. Oh, Victor, fantastic.
down by the wind that blew off my dad's loaded life. The grief was rife with silence. My sight in awe caught everyone else's bewilderment and agony. My heartbeat froze and my eyes turned into River Nile. Thoughts of loneliness and liveliness engulfed me in that sweet savannah smell.
That is fantastic. Oh,
I'm done.
okay. Fantastic. I love the line about your eyes turning into the River Nile. I also really like your approach to titles and how they're like longer declarative titles, which I think is very like in right now with poetry titles. So you really captured that well. But just fantastic. Yeah, and I especially like the line about grief was very powerful, I thought. Anybody else have something to share? Yes, Josh.
I like where this one's going, but not where it is, because it's not a lot of
Write that
time,
down
I
as a
think.
line of itself.
There's not a lot of time. So I make up a title, Where Silence Is. I cannot find silence, that space where light shifts thought, where breezes freeze leaves in place, where thoughts settle like silt beneath still waters, where insects withdraw, where sirens quiet, where planes stay landed and footsteps cease and bird call is swallowed.
You took that in such a good direction. That was fantastic. I love the line about where the insects recede. Was that it? The insects something in like that.
I don't. It withdraw. They
Withdraws.
Yeah.
Withdraws is one of my favorite poetry words. That was really, really awesome. And I really like the direction you took that in. Instead of sort of dilating one moment, you've got this collage of feelings, and it was just fantastic. Anybody else have something to share? And it's okay if the answer is no.
I can go again, but again, not because it's good, but just because I think it's fun to look at your text messages and see the poetry that people speak without realizing it. So I just looked at some of mine, and let's see, I just pulled lines from 5 different texts.
Fantastic.
We need to talk tomorrow. It's time for your weekly after vaccination check-in. We just got in, nerves a bit shot, but safe and sound. Sorry, starting over to emphasize drama. I felt the weight of it through my arm, like a snake slithering in you.
Ooh. So I especially like that opening line, that instant sense of urgency and drama and emotion right from the get-go is fantastic. And that last line was also very evocative. So that you guys are especially good, this group, with first and last lines, which are usually the hardest ones to write. So that is very noteworthy. Anybody else have something to share? Just give it a minute. Okay, well then we will call this a wrap. Thank you so much for sharing those poems with me. I can't tell you how nice it was to hear those. It just really made me happy. You guys made it look easy in a way that I'm very surprised with. Like, that was actually really crazy. But I hope that you, for the rest of the night, will kind of stay in this open mind space, observing your own thoughts. And kind of like Heidi said, there's a lot of little poetry buried in places where maybe you didn't think to look for them. And once you start looking, you really see it everywhere. And I think that's a great way to go through life. So thank you so much for spending this time with me tonight. Definitely email me any poems that come from this if you don't mind. But yes, thank you so much, everybody. That was so wonderful. And you guys are fantastic poets. So thank you for sharing that with me.
All right. Thank you so much, Sadie. That was so wonderful. I want to kind of bring everything together so that we can prepare for our main event, which will be on this Thursday. So last week, we started off with our workshops by looking at pictures and imagery. And what we did was we created, using our sociological imaginations, a special space where we could look at pictures that we had that we wanted to collage together to create our empowerment stories. But in doing those empowerment stories, we were able to learn to quadrant out the identity of the picture, the same as we would quadrant out emotions and feelings and meaning in a situation. So we were able to see how our personal became political because we became empowerment bodies to share our feelings and our experiences with each other. But we also learned how to take the most challenging, maybe, situations in life and to look at those and to see what we can do about that using the symbolic interactionist perspective and also the personal as political ideology. That was our sociology. Next, we went into meditation and mindfulness. And through this journey, we were able to understand that even when we take the time and dissect situations, even when as leaders, we're able to be empowering people or even look at the experiences of other people, that we have to take a moment and then we have to give ourselves a chance to rewind and give ourselves a chance to just take a break, because we pour onto other people so much and so often as leaders, but sometimes we have to take the time to say, I love me and that I am worthy and that I am good enough, so that we can then be the leaders that we want to be. And in our next workshop, we began to focus on energy, and we focused on like understanding how to be emotionally responsible parties. And that means that sometimes when we are so hardcore, sometimes when we are these amazing leaders and out here taking in and breathing in everybody's pain and everyone's experiences, that sometimes we don't want to show our emotions because we don't want to break. We don't want to break down because we think everybody needs us to be strong. So we talked about theater and we talked about theatrical delivery of our emotions. And we learned how to work collectively in a group together to figure out emotive responses and ways that we can help our students and ways that we can help our peers through collective understandings of situations. And we learned how to pour out and to be emotional. Some of us cried, and some of us maybe had not cried in a long time, and we became vulnerable. And so we learned how to be vulnerable and emotionally driven leaders. Now, today, we took a break from that emotion outward, and then we began to pour inward. So we looked at our ideas and our thoughts, and we took time to see where our minds would go if we were prompted to do things that we wouldn't ordinarily do in our writing or in our thought processes. And so this poetry can happen no matter what you're doing. And so if you can think about the context of using poetry, even in your everyday actions, even when thinking about how you're going to be a leader and how you're going to do something different, how you're going to make a difference in society, we can be poetic in our actions, as same as we can take a break in a moment to be calm and quiet and think and just let our intellectual and creative minds just flow. And also this amazing opportunity to have a very quiet, a very peaceful workshop where we weren't focused on conflict and we weren't focused on, tragedy. We were just able to just relax and to do something collectively with people. And so hopefully this brought about the calm that we needed in the day or in the week, in the month, in the year, even if that's necessary. And so now our next opportunity that we're going to have together is going to be an opportunity where we engage in a leadership training. And in this leadership training that we do on this Thursday, we're going to hear from 4 leaders that are going to walk us through cultural competencies and thinking about different cultures and being able to understand and think outside of the box, and even engaging spoken word poetry in doing this as well. We're going to learn from a leader that's going to tell us to stop for a moment and think about the blind spots that we sometimes miss, because a lot of times we may engage in error making. And we spend so much time trying to do things for other people that we sometimes don't reflect upon things that we've done and how we can probably do things a little bit differently. And so we're going to talk about how we respond to our mistakes and how we turn our mistakes into sometimes our greatest accomplishments. We're also going to have a leader to talk about emotions again, but this time talking about accountability and creating an accountability team. So an emotionally responsible team that is thinking critically about the feelings and the emotions and the responses of individuals that you're talking to and communicating with on a regular basis. And then finally, we're going to have someone to communicate with us about just leadership as a whole and what it means to be a fierce leader. So that's what we have in store. If you have not registered yet, the only registration process is that I'm going to put you into a group, because what we wanted to do is we want to have these workshops where we have a group A and a group B, so that when you break off into your groups into a different Zoom link, there's a smaller group there, so that when you have your chat and conversation, you have more time to be able to express yourself or to communicate during the breakout session. So if you send me an email, then you're going to get a Word document that has a group A or a group B set of links, so that you can start off with everybody, go to your group, and then come back for the keynote and then the Q&A session where everybody will be together. So that's what we have in store. If you're enrolled in the continuing education course, which now we have 53 students enrolled in this course, I sent you an email about how to log into Sakai so that you know how to do that. And if it's difficult for you, or if you feel like it's taking too long, please text me so I can just quickly walk you through that. I do not mind at all. I would love to help you walk through that. If you are interested in the continuing education course, but you haven't, signed up for it, you can also email me as well. I'll put my email in the chat. So for those of you who've attended the workshops just for fun, thank you so much, because I have really enjoyed doing this and being a part of these wonderful conversations and workshops. Thank you all for coming tonight, and just please have an amazing night and the rest of your week. I hope I see you at the leadership training. Love you all. Thank you. Bye.